This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest a real great guy in Alabama politics, Alabama government, I should say, a real public servant, former Senate President Pro Tem Greg Reed of Jasper, Walker County. Greg has been a stalwart leader of the state Senate for close to a decade now, and he recently has taken a job in Governor Ivey's administration as the director of the new Department of Workforce Development, which is a very important aspect of our government now. I'm real proud to see Alabama take a step forward in realizing that it's a new day in workforce in the state. And Greg, good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be with you always.
Appreciate your service to the state over the years. Going back to that, you're not very old.
Just a child.
You really are. You know, but you were born and raised in Walker County, wasn't you?
I was. Grew up in Cordova.
Yeah.
In South Walker County.
So was Carl Elliott, wasn't he?
Yes.
That's where Carl Elliott was from, I think. And so you went on to, where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school, Cordova High School, and then went to Walker College, which is a private 2-year college in Jasper, which is now Bevel State Community College.
It was a private school at that time?
It was.
I didn't know that. I always thought it was a state part of the community college system all the time.
And then went on to the University of Alabama and got a bachelor's degree in business. And
now, is your wife Mitzi from Walker County too?
She is. She and I were high school sweethearts.
You know,
we've known each other our whole lives.
I had the same thing about. I just did Jabbo Wagner's biography, as you know, and he and Marilyn are high school sweethearts.
That's right.
They
from
went
Inslee.
to Inslee.
Yeah, Inslee High School.
Inslee High School together, back before you, for a few years.
For sure.
Anyway, so was she from Cordova like you?
Yeah, she was from Cordova. Her family lived in Cordova. Her parents are still in Cordova. And so that's where we were, and again, known each other our whole lives, and been married for 36 years, have 3 sons.
How old are they?
My twin boys are 30, and my younger boy's 28.
They all went to Alabama like you, didn't they?
Well, my twin boys went to Alabama, both graduate and undergraduate at Alabama, and but my younger son was an athlete. He played baseball at the University of Montevallo, so he graduated from Montevallo.
Sort of like Jabbo Wagner's son, Jay.
Yeah. Who
was a great baseball player at Auburn.
He was.
And you got your chief of staff, Harrison Adams, with you today. Harrison is an Alabama guy, true and true, isn't he?
Harrison's a great guy and has been working with me now for a while. I'm excited that he's with me on this new venture in the Alabama Department of Workforce. And Harrison's a great young man, bright, brilliant. Alabama grad, Alabama
president.
law grad, SGA president, so a lot of accolades.
Greg, before we get into the workforce thing, I want to talk about, prior to the show we were talking about what a great legacy Walker County has in legislative leaders. Now, I'm going to name some, and you elaborate on it. For the size of that county, it's not a small county, but for the size county, you think back, going back to the Bankheads, you had John and Will Bankhead, who were a senator, and one was Speaker of the U.S. House. Then following them, the great Tom Bevel, who was from Townley in Walker County. I mean, we called him our 3rd U.S. Senator. Everybody in the state leaned on him because he was sharing probation. Now, Robert Adderholt's in that same powerful position in the House, although Robert's really from Haleyville.
He is.
And his dad was a respected circuit judge over there. Then you've got, when I was a young page, you had a powerful state senator. Bob Wilson was the most powerful state senator, sort of like you were before going to that. And then there have been other ones, over the years. Bobby Tom Crow was Speaker Pro Tem of the House at a young age.
That's right. And you had
Carl Elliott.
Carl Elliott.
That's where we got on him a while ago. He's about Cordova.
Yeah, as a congressman. And then, of course, you had Charles Bishop from Walker County, who was in the Senate 3 terms, was agriculture commissioner, ran for governor a couple of times.
That's right. Would you follow Bishop in the Senate?
I did.
What year did you never serve in the House, did you?
I did not. I was a first-time candidate in 2010. So I served in the Senate for 14 years and ran in 2010 and was elected to the Senate and did not have an opponent for the rest of my service.
So
I was unopposed.
You had an opponent the first time you ran, but
I did.
In 2010. That was the year the Republicans took control of the Senate.
That's correct.
Jabo's mentioned that. We're talking about you and different things, and Jabo considers himself almost a Walker County because he lives at Smith Lake all the
Well,
time.
he loves to be at Smith Lake. That's one of his favorite spots in the world.
It really
But
is.
I can remember meeting Jabo years ago. I was vice chair of the Republican Party of Alabama. So I served in that post for 8 years before I ran for public office. So I had known Jabo Wagner for a long, long time. He was one of the first that asked me what I consider running for public office. And it took me a little while to get to that place. I had a young business and a young family, and had some things I had to get done before I was ready to run for office. But 2010 was my time, and 14 years of great service, served as the majority leader for 6, as the president pro tem for 4. Just a great opportunity of service for me in the Alabama Senate, and I just loved every minute of it. Met so many wonderful people, have got so many strong friendships and relationships as a result of my tenure and serving there, and was able to do a lot of important things for my community back in Senate District 5, which covers Walker County, but also portions of Tuscaloosa and Jefferson and Fayette. Winston County I represented, Lamar County, those areas were part of
So
my
are they still in that same Senate district?
The only thing that's different than when I started is I had represented Winston County, but in redistricting,
Gudger got it.
Gudger got Winston County, and I picked up all of Lamar.
What about, do you have all of Fayette?
I do.
That's a great county.
It is a great county. I've had great relationships, good friendships there.
I like the Ocala South that's represented them.
Yeah.
And I like Branyard too.
Yeah, both great guys, good friends of mine.
Now, does Walker County have more than one House seat? I know that Jay Woods is in one of them, and he's going to run for your Senate seat. But is there another, like, what seat was Connie Rowe in?
Connie Rowe was in 13, which is the seat Matt Woods is in currently, and he's qualified as the only Republican to run for the Senate. But then the other House seat is 14, which Tim Wadsworth has been in that seat. Tim's from Winston County.
He's from Winston.
Yeah, and that district covers portions of Walker, Winston, Coleman, and Jefferson. Is that Senate district, or excuse me, that House district. So, but Tim Wadsworth has served there for a while. He and I have worked great together.
I would say he was from Walker County. But
He's from
Winston.
Arley.
That's in Winston County.
Yep.
The free state of Winston. They could do a show on that, couldn't we?
No doubt. No doubt.
You know, when I was a boy, you look at the state voting, and 66 counties that vote in the Democratic primary. Winston voted in the Republican.
That's right.
That's the same way when you were growing up, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was always. I can remember when I was first elected as the Republican Party chair in Walker County. Every elected official in the county or that touched the county was a Democrat.
When you were a Republican?
When I was the Republican Party chair, and except for Kurt Lee. And Kurt Lee was serving as Senate District 5. That's right. And so Kurt served 2 terms, Senate District 5, but he didn't win Walker County. He was able to win the Senate seat, but he didn't win Walker County.
Is that right? Because the Walker was still voting Democratic.
That's right. So I can remember as a Republican Party chair in Walker County, we went for 3 months during my tenure to where we didn't have enough people show up at the meetings to make a quorum. So we couldn't change the bylaws to allow us to do business with less people until we finally were able to get enough beat committeemen to be willing to participate and show up.
What years were that?
That would have been, let's see, 96, 98, right in there.
So Walker, was that Democratic that long?
Was. Yeah.
I didn't realize they were late coming to the dance then.
Yep. And
Coleman had come on board earlier, had they?
Earlier, yes, they had.
That's interesting about Walker being so long in there. I wonder what caused that. Because it's a big labor county?
Big labor county. I mean, if you were
Coal miners were
unionized. United Mine Workers.
They were all unionized.
Yeah, they were strong, and are still strong. A lot of retarees.
Do they vote Republican now?
They do. Yeah, I've always had great relationships with the United Mine Workers. Of course, both my grandfathers were coal miners.
That makes sense. They're from Walker County.
Yeah, my wife's father and one of her grandfathers was coal miner. The other grandfather was Charlie Harbison, who was the sheriff of Walker County back in the 50s.
There were a lot of Harbisons in Coleman County.
Yeah, it's all the same family.
Same family. There are a lot of Harbisons from that area. That's a big family.
Big family, that's right.
And your wife was a Harbison?
Yes.
You know, one of the interesting counties up there, that Moulton, Lawrence County. Now they've got family. Remember that Terry family that had a big Terry family reunion up there?
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't get off on that. But so the unions have gone pragmatic now. They still exist, but they realize that everything's in a Republican primary.
Yeah,
So
I think that, I think right now some of the retired coal miners, my father-in-law is a good example, retired coal miner, Baptist preacher, and he ran for the legislature as a Democrat in years past, I think back in '86, but now he is as staunch a Republican and as strong a Trump supporter as you can find anywhere. And I think that would be indicative of many of those that are in and around Walker County very conservative in their views.
Was Vicki Drummond was a Republican all the time, though, wasn't
she was a Republican the whole time. Vicki Drummond, what a fantastic lady.
She really is.
She's just a wonderful person. Vicki is the only Alabamian to ever be elected to one of the 4 posts for the Republican Party of the United States from Alabama. She's the unique, as secretary, she's the unique person from our state ever to be elected to one of those executive posts with the Republican Party of the United States.
She was one of the finest ladies I've ever known. I was listening to the convention on television, watching it, supposedly, I was listening to it in the background, and I heard this beautiful Southern voice.
Calling the roll.
Calling the roll. I said, that is the most beautiful, that's an Alabamian. And I looked up, it was Vicki.
Yeah.
She's secretary. She was calling the roll when the states
Vicki's
were coming in.
Great friend. Her husband Mike, who's my dentist.
He still practices?
He's still practicing dentistry.
I didn't know that. I see them all the time. You remember I had one when I had my book out, Goats and Governors. That was the biggest book signing I ever had. Was in Walker County.
Yeah, I remember.
You were there. Adderholt came down and introduced me.
My mom was there.
She's still living?
She is. 82 years old.
She reads my column.
She reads your column, and she read that book cover to cover. Loved it.
You loved those stories, didn't you?
Yeah.
I didn't have enough about the bankheads in there. If I ever did another book, I'd cover a lot of that stuff we just talked about.
I had somebody ask me about the topic of the bankheads, and they were talking about in the First United Methodist Church in Jasper, there is a plaque that's a brass plaque that's on the pew still today where Franklin Roosevelt sat for the funeral of Speaker Bankhead.
I've seen pictures of when FDR came to Alabama for Speaker Bankhead's funeral.
Came on the train.
That's how they traveled back then.
Yep.
I think probably went over to Warm Springs afterwards. But I was talking to Senator Shelby yesterday. He's retired and 90 years old, lives in Tuscaloosa. In his house he lived in 50 years, Indian Hills there. And Shelby's got him a new dog. And that's all he wants to talk about is his little dog. He says, a little bitty dog. He says, a little thing, I can't take it outside because I have to look after this dog. I called him and said, what you doing? So I'm outside my backyard taking this little dog. And if I can't let it loose because the vultures will get it, and they'll get real mad at me because it's really her dog. And I said, Shep, what'd you name your dog? Tallulah. So he's named his dog after, you know this, but Tallulah Bankhead, the famous movie star, was Speaker Will Bankhead's daughter.
Yeah.
And he would tell people in Congress, he said, I'm Speaker of the House, but I'm not the most important person in my family, or by far not best known. In her generation, she was the most famous movie star in America.
Yeah. For sure, from Jasper, Alabama.
Yeah. People didn't realize that, how famous. It was for my time, but what I read of clips and everything, Tallulah Bankhead, so Shelby's named his dog after Tallulah Bankhead.
What about
that? That made me think about that.
Talking about icons, Richard Shelby, my goodness.
Oh, God.
What an icon.
He really is. I told him yesterday, I said, Shelby, you're the greatest U.S. senator in Alabama history. I've written. You keep writing that, and I'll believe it eventually. But you know what, Greg? He was chairman. Get this. Rules. He was chairman of the Senate Rules Committee. He was chairman of banking, which you know is important in Washington. Covers housing, intelligence. He oversaw the CIA.
Yeah.
But his last 8 years, he was chairman of appropriations. That's when he made a mark on Alabama.
No doubt.
I just went to that FBI facility opening, and at Huntsville, he had 5,000 federal jobs, an average salary of $148,000 a year.
Right.
No incentives, but that leads us into your job, which is going to be one of the most important cabinet positions in the state on this workforce development thing, because you've got to figure out how to train people for the jobs at Airbus that he brought in Mobile, for the FBI facility, for the growth in Huntsville.
Sure.
And I really think that your school that you've represented, Belleville State, I think the community college system is going to be an integral part of your situation.
Has to be.
It has to be.
Has to be.
I think Baker's done an excellent job in getting them geared up to find people jobs. So let's go into the details of that workforce thing. Your new position as head of workforce development.
Well, first off, I can say, my appreciation to Kay Ivey. The governor has been a great friend of mine. When I was serving as majority leader, she was lieutenant governor. We would talk daily about what's about to happen on the floor of the Alabama Senate, who's going to be mad, who's going to, be upset, and she and I would talk about the details because we understood what the calendar was going to be as we would go there. So I've been great friends with the governor, and she was very persuasive as she came to me and recruited me for this post. She said it was going to be one of the most important elements of the balance of her tenure as governor of our state, and she wanted me to be involved with it. So I'm honored to do that. What happened in the creation of the Department of Workforce is legislation that came from the state legislature that took portions, the training elements and portions of the Department of Commerce and all of the Department of Labor, and is going to put that together as a new state agency that will be the Department of Workforce.
So Commerce and Labor are merged into workforce. It's just going to be called workforce or workforce development?
Workforce.
Will your offices build where the old Labor Department was right across the Capitol?
We are now. That's where we are now. There may be some changes related to location of some of the employees related to the new department and the like. We'll figure that out as time goes along, but that's where we're at currently. But in looking at this, you're going to have responsibilities for elements that were part of the Department of Labor, like inspections of mines, inspections of quarries, elevators, escalators, boilers, all kinds of things that are associated with responsibilities of that department, as well as unemployment and workers' compensation.
You got to cover all that.
Got to cover all that. Responsible for all that.
So you'll keep a lot of the employees that are trained to do that.
Absolutely. Then moving to the workforce area,
the new part of it,
you're going to be taking many of the elements of training that were at one time offered as incentives through the Department of Commerce. They're now going to be under the Department of Workforce. So I'll still be working and will be working very closely with Ellen McNair, who's the Secretary of Commerce.
She took Greg Canfield's thing.
That's correct.
But now she's a part of the cabinet. She reports to Kay Ivey, not to you.
Correct.
And
no,
so
she's a cabinet member.
So she'll report like you do to
That's
the governor.
Correct.
But you'll train her people. Or you'll train people.
Well,
how that works.
She's got folks that are going to be, that were a part of Commerce, that are going to be a part of the Department of Workforce moving forward. And what they have the skill set in doing is trying to work with those that we incentivize to come to Alabama to receive training in collaboration, sometimes with the two-year college system, in making sure that we can let those folks know, if you come to Alabama, we're going to help your people be trained. And so using that as some kind of an incentive is something that's been done in the past very successfully for the Department of Commerce, but now that function is going to be a part of this new Department of Workforce.
So really and truly, I see what you're going at. I call the old Greg Canfield position. What's that position called? The head of
Commerce, Secretary of Commerce.
So she was over there, but you're taking over that department under Workforce.
Yes. She will still have all of Commerce. and she's the secretary and a fantastic
Oh, okay.
one. I'm just going to have a division of that was the training portion that's going to join the Department of Workforce.
Well, Greg, you may be needed to go on recruiting trips too. I can see you being part of the team.
Well,
you will
let
have
me
to
tell
be,
you
won't you?
what I think is the basis for why the governor was so aggressive and the legislature so aggressive with this plan, of which I was involved in when I was Senate President pro tem. But if you look at what Alabama's done, Steve, we worked on what are fantastic incentive programs, the game plan, maybe the best incentives, certainly in the Southeast, maybe in the nation. Also, Rebuild Alabama. We've put billions of dollars into infrastructure in Alabama. We increased the gas tax. That wasn't popular politically, but it was required. We hadn't dealt with it in 27 years.
I was on board.
Then you look at successes that we've already had. Alabama's had tremendous success in industrial and manufacturing growth. We're now the third largest producer of automobiles in America, fourth largest producer of airliners in the world, fifth largest producer of ships in the world. Alabama's positioned itself as a real leader, and many of these investors, these industrial and manufacturing facilities, want to be in the same location where others have had great success. So you look at the things the state's done on broadband internet access. We've spent $2.5 billion on broadband internet access, state and federal dollars, incentivizing those that are in that business to go to the end of the road and provide everybody with broadband internet, which brings the rural portions of our state into the economic development discussions. So if you look at all the things we've done, what's the question that's left to answer? If you're going to build the Steve Flowers facility and you're looking at Alabama as an opportunity and you're willing to invest $100 million to build your plant, and we've got broadband and incentives and we've got good infrastructure and we've got a lot of success, what is the one thing I've got to answer for you to be willing to come and invest? And that is, where am I going to get a workforce that's going to be able to build my products? And not only is your plan that I can have a workforce today, but what is the state of Alabama's plan for the future to be able to guarantee I'm going to have workers as my business continues to grow? And that is the primary mission of the Department of Workforce. How can we work with the business community, of which I've got two boards, an executive board and a workforce board. The executive board's led by Jeff Peoples, CEO of Alabama Power. The workforce board led by Phil Webb, who's in the concrete business, and I love Phil. And you've got gubernatorial appointments of these boards. You've got about 45 of business leaders across Alabama from every sector that are going to be providing advice and information as we develop a workforce plan that's going to be in collaboration with the legislature and the governor, going to be in support of the incentive activities for the Department of Commerce and the secretary there, Ellen, that we mentioned a minute ago, working together to help increase the workforce participation rate in our state. More workers, better trained, more able to provide great benefits for Alabamians, but to recruit more jobs to our state and be able to do that better than anybody around us. That's the mission of what I'm trying to stay focused on.
And that's what the state needs to be doing. You mentioned this, and it just occurred to me, and it shouldn't have already, but you know, we need, like you just said, we have been so successful in the past 5 or 6, 10 years, even go back 20 when we brought Mercedes in. We need to piggyback on those industries.
Yes.
If we're already showing a niche that we have become the foremost automobile manufacturing place in the country, then it stands to reason that our future growth would be another automobile manufacturer. We should say, well, Mercedes and Honda are already there. You know, they've already got, they're building for, they're designing their state workforce for us. So there's no need to recreate the wheels, what I'm saying.
Well, and you've got a lot of advancement Look at the technologies that are associated with the defense industry in Huntsville, the aerospace
yeah,
industry.
that's right.
Look at the automotive industry and artificial intelligence. What all's going on with cybersecurity and those thousands of FBI agents that are going to be in Huntsville. And look at Alabama's position in the 21st century economy. Our workers are going to have to be better trained. They're going to have to be more sophisticated because of the opportunities that are coming our way. And so one of the things that is a focus not only in training current workers, but how are we going to refocus our efforts on young people? So let me tell you, one of the things that we did in this Working for Alabama package that I think is going to be very important is we established a new diploma called the Career Pathways Diploma. So a kid can identify in the 9th grade, 10th grade, I want to be a machinist or I want to be a welder. And then they're going to have a track that will allow them to move forward in their high school years to be able, once they get to their senior year, have a dual enrollment scholarship waiting for them at the 2-year college in community college in their community. That's where they're getting their credentials, high school and junior college at the same time. And they graduate at 18, 19 years old, have these credentials, have apprenticeship opportunities lined up. They're ready to go to work making good salaries as young people. Rather than an attitude that says, let's go through high school, think about what we want to do. When we get 19, try to decide what we do next. If those kids identify earlier in their high school careers, we can put them on an unbelievable track to be super successful with zero debt in a place that if they choose some of those trade options, they'll be in a position to do that.
And as you know, they make more money than a college professor will.
Make a lot of money. I mean, I had a plumber come to my house just 2 weeks ago. I can guarantee you he is making a good living from what he was charging me to do a little work at my house.
Well, Greg, I hate to tell you this, our time's up. I want to have you back again when you get more into the thing, maybe later on in the year.
Sure.
And we can talk about how things are developing over there.
Well, it's an exciting time. I'm excited to be a part of it. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got great people that are going to be working with the Department of Workforce, and it's going to be my privilege to try and be a servant leader as I've been in the past to move things forward for the good of the people of Alabama. It's an exciting time.
We're fortunate to have you in that position of your experience and background and integrity, and we appreciate you doing it. Folks, our guest tonight has been former State Senator and President Pro Tem of the Senate, Greg Reed, who is now the Director of Workforce Development in the state, and a very important job for the state's future. We thank y'all for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Goes back.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.